will tell us book is bad. Just work hard and be smart and be a people's person. So I grew up
Okay,
being
you.
so like I'm telling you, these scholarships are there, but who are getting this scholarship? If you don't know someone who knows someone, you won't get this scholarship.
Before you let, sorry, I think the host wants to say something, but I just wanted to ask something quite personal. One little small thing he says, you just been talking about the dad. I haven't heard, this is a different scenario. Usually you'd hear something about the mom too.
Oh, my mom.
Yeah.
She's heaven.
Oh, okay.
I really talk about my dad when it comes to poverty, because he really made us believe that we can come out from that situation. I am not the richest woman in the world, but I'm in a position where I can do my stuff without seeking help from someone else. And that was his intention for us. So my dad is, people don't really appreciate their fathers, but I really appreciate him so much. My mom, she was just a mom, a housewife, trying to make a living by washing clothes, doing 1, 2, 3. So I grew up seeing my parents doing these things, and it gave me that courage not to have that mentality that exactly. So when I go back to Kayole, now that where I am in life, at least I can help 1 or 2, 3 people to come out of the ghetto life.
Oh, okay.
Hello?
Yeah,
you can hear me?
We can, yes.
Yeah, we are there.
Just give it.
So I try going back. Like I say, we try to look for sponsors. You meet young children, young women, young men. They've gone to school, they've passed their Form 4, but past there they can't go to any university because they claim this Form 4 certificate has not even helped me. So what will the university one help me with? So we are trying to break that mentality with so many young stars in Kayole. So when I go back there, I usually go back there. We've even started a project with some of my colleagues. You get people, they tell you their stories. You wonder these scholarships. When I was in Nairobi University, I remember we were being told to apply for scholarships. But who gets this scholarship? Because I've never had even a single person I know getting those scholarships. You only hear someone from the other side of Nairobi, the Kilimani side, they have scholarship, they have gone to US, they have
abroad.
gone to
Yeah.
Yeah, but why you're getting what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand you.
I try. I even met with the Ambassador Nabukwezi. We try to talk, but meeting these people is very hard. You wonder where the scholarship are going. You have to have someone from the government to push for you the scholarship. It's so sad. And once we get to do that, these people are our future leaders. They need these scholarships, because when you go to the gate and tell someone what do you want to be, they'll tell you, I want to be a politician. Why? So that I can get in the government and squander money. So it's
just a moment.
Yes, people talking.
The guys who are you saying want to get into the government to squander money? The guys who are now in bad positions, or other people out there?
Yes, like when you
so the people are
other
frustrated.
people out here, like when you yes, people are frustrated because they are clearly seeing the government is not helping in any way. So what if I just incite people here, they vote for me, then I enter the government and I live my life without thinking of the other people? So I think that is one of the major causes of poverty in this country. We have a very bad system of leadership. People just want to eat. They are not thinking of
Others.
the other people.
Yeah.
Yes, they are not thinking of those who voted for them, those who don't have a voice. That's why I really like reading that thing. When someone say I'm not going to vote, no, you have to go and vote, because you have to remove
Thank you.
these people who are stealing our money. I feel so bad. I really feel so bad as a taxpayer. It really hurts me when I read the headlines and billions are missing.
You're not
You're like,
alone,
wow.
Tina.
And that billion could. Oh, you can't hear me? Oh
We
my
can hear you.
God,
We
my
can hear
net.
you.
And what
Oh,
are you saying?
so this topic is so
Do
emotional to
you?
me.
Yeah,
It's very
it's
emotional.
understandable. I mean, actually, it's good that we have someone like you here. Not that the rest of us come from the green side of town, but just saying.
So you should walk. It's good when, because I thank God, even if you don't believe in God, I really thank Him, because I got the opportunity to come out of the box I was in. I got to travel. I got to travel in Kenya as a whole. I got to travel some places in Africa, and you see the main. If you just like put all the things together, it's just bad leadership in Africa. Period. Africa is a very productive continent. We have everything, but just the worst leadership. So that's one of the major reasons of poverty in Kenya. Yeah, bad leadership.
Okay. So what if we say, hello?
Yeah, we can
Yes,
hear
I
you.
can hear you.
Just keep talking.
I just wanted to comment. What if we say that poverty it majorly just come from the mindset of how you think, how you put. Let's say just like the way Tina was talking. She talks about some of the guys engaging in maybe criminal activities. So it's like just like when you got that kind of mindset, you've been suffering for like quite a long time, and when you get the opportunity to get out of poverty, you feel like you don't want that, you don't want it to get out, so you like want to cling upon it. So when you say that maybe the government is not providing the scholarship, the government is not thinking of other people who are kind of suffering in the same manner, they don't want that the poverty to come back. Just in short.
Actually,
Sure.
the mindset. Hello, you can hear me?
Yeah.
The mindset thing is big, like mental health, blah blah blah. You know, most of us Africans, we don't know any. We are not being taught on mental health. It's very real. But like I told, but when I was growing up, I used to look up to so many people. You know, you look up to this person, this person. But even you in this life, you need someone to just hold your hand. In ghetto, children don't have anybody to hold their hand. Trust me. If you're lucky enough to have a parent who is there for you, who speaks positive words to you, you're one of the luckiest few. But trust me, the way maybe you were raised, your mother will come and she will say, "Good work, my son." Your father will tell you, "Hey, continue." Then get nobody has time to tell you that. You're like 7 children. Your mother is frustrated with life here. Your father is trying to figure out how he will pay rent. But you're trying to get what I'm saying. So that's why, like, places where, like in Mombasa, places like in Likoni, those sides, they are really trying to teach women on family planning, because also having many children, it's not advisable
Tina,
in such
I
situations. Yes.
sorry, I want to just chime in before you go too far because I think I'll forget it.
Okay.
But I was just thinking, like, on a different note, has maybe such a background um, influenced how you look at certain things, or maybe how you want to approach your own life, so that probably don't have to go through the same things again? Or are you the kind of person who thinks if someone got out of this, then I'll do whatever I want to do without fearing poverty because you got out, so you assume you wouldn't go back? And I'm asking this because you brought up the issue about children and family planning. I feel like most people, they usually have these, how am I going to, don't want to call it a philosophy. Anyway, I think that I tell myself if I come from a poor background, the last thing I want to do is to have dependence. And this is simply because, I mean, if it was a struggle taking care of a household, I don't want to risk ever having such kind of responsibility to, take care of others and all that. So do you feel like you also want to, say, have your own family and other things and people to take care of and encourage them and tell them I got out so you can get out too?
Personally, I fear having a family. Like I even fear marriage. I just feel like I should just be alone. But again, you can't. Pardon?
Ngao, I think Ngao was
Hello?
talking. No, I think Ngao was talking to someone else.
I'm still here.
Oh, like I was saying, I really do fear for that. I really fear marriage. I think it comes with so many responsibilities. And then the reason why mostly I fear marriage is because my dad passed away, he left us, then we had to now start again from scratch, 000.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in school, like someone said, what was it? Mentality.
Yeah.
I was working hard to come out of that situation. I was not even going to school actually because I needed that education. I just needed to pass, get a nice job. It was just something in my mental. It's mental, by the way. So, like I told you, personally, I advocate for both boy child and girl child. So, me and a few of my friends who were fortunate enough to come from different places, ghetto places. I have a colleague who was born, raised in Kibera. I have another one who was born, raised in Dandora Phase 5. You know Dandora Phase 5?
Okay, I do, yes.
Yeah, I'm
Yes,
close to
Dandora
that
Phase
point,
5.
Downside.
Yeah. So I have like, that you've gone there, you've seen the situation there.
Yeah.
So I have colleagues who are born, raised there. I have people from Kiambio who are now like managers in big companies. So we formed a group whereby we would like to go back to the ghetto and educate. Even if we educate 3 people, we are not even looking for numbers. Just even one person who will just listen and get that mentality of their head that if they don't come out of the ghetto alive, they have to join a group, a bad gang, or get married to a rich man. Yeah? So that's the mentality there.
Yeah.
I
So
have a question.
personally, like I've told, yes.
I think I cut you short. Continue, Tina, I'll ask.
So personally, I think I will rather just give back to the society, like go and teach people that even if I get just one person who listen, like there's life after ghetto. It's good. There's a group called Kipawa Group. It was formed in Umoja to take these children just out of Eastlands, to take them this other side and see life the other side. But the question you asked earlier, forming my own family, that one, Mungu tu ndo anajua. God willing. I'm not in a hurry.
Okay.
So
Okay, Brenda, I think
thank
you
you.
can ask your question.
Yeah. So I get the impression, because I have interacted a lot from young people who grew up in the ghetto, especially Madare, Kibera, and street children who have been rehabilitated. The impression I get is that while there may be physical poverty, the lacking of like practical things, there's a lot of wealth in terms of like community wealth, how people come together. And I see that a lot. I also see that also there's a lot of like sort of resilience. And if you have like someone who grew up in that environment, you find them being able to like this, what do you call it, street smart attitudes. And I well, there, yes, there are those who will who may continue to suffer like mentally as a result of the situations they grew up in. I have found that there are a larger percentage that outgrow it. I work a lot, and I have worked for a long time in refugee populations, and this is the same thing. You would think that people who've undergone like very disparate was physical like lack would be like very far off in terms of like being able to be resilient, being able to retain that mentality. But I have found that there's also a lot of resilience that comes to them, and we sometimes focus on the poverty, the physical poverty, and make the assumption that it is also it also forms part of their psyche, which I don't think is true, and I could be wrong on this. Secondly, I heard when you talked about mentality and especially the scarcity mentality, poverty being like a continuity or a part of the scarcity mentality. I still feel like in Africa, for instance, or some of the communities, the lack is not real. Like it's more perceived than real, because most people, like, I grew up in a village, and right now you see people, really there are moments when people lack food. But when you look at it, it's a very rich village in terms of then the climatic conditions. You know, they still land sort of, and that could if could that could economically change the people, but the perception, the mentality that people stick with is, you know, if you're not educated, you don't have a certain like a job, then you are going to remain poor. And so they remain in those attitudes of poverty or scarcity. Let me use the word, the scarcity mentality, even when there is enough. Thirdly is just a comment, which is based on Yuval Noah. I think there has been a lot of growth and improvement on our societies, and poverty is no longer as it was really, because like there's just been a huge shift and change. And right now, in fact, people are dying more of diabetes, you know, like obesity and such kind of conditions, rather than malnutrition as it was in the past. So I think there's more improvement in terms of poverty, such that the mentality is what lives us more in our past than the actual situation that is today. And I'm not like looking down or diminishing, I'm looking for the right word, yeah, the those people who live in a state of actual physical lack. I'm just using like in terms of statistics. Yeah.
Okay. What Brenda said there is true about the where she was saying the village part, because like in Kayole, people really tried to invest in things. Someone will try form a small business, but you know what brings down Kayole mostly is drugs and guns, because people have guns there. You don't even know where they get guns. Apparently, they claim police give them guns. So you see someone will start a business, then the gang people will just come and ruin their businesses. So the village life is totally different from the one in town, because in town, I think people want to get money fast, the microwave society. So you see, like like personally, where I was raised, I'm speaking on where I was raised, someone will start a business or they'll start an investment on something, but then after 2 years, you go back, you'll find them, they're deep in drugs. All the money they had invested in, they start using them on drugs or things. I have a cousin, he was a genius, he was book smart, he had a whole future ahead of him. I see him to date, he tries to go to rehab, but he backslide after 1 month. He tries, he really does try. We've tried even getting psychiatrists for him, but it doesn't happen. So people wash their hands on many of their relatives. So you find where I was raised, when someone make it in life, they come out of ghetto, they don't want to go back. They say they won't even help them. Like if they came out of ghetto, you should also just come out of ghetto. So like the situation I'm telling you about my cousin, he's now just, even we don't know where he is, like personally, we don't even know where he is. And it's not like we don't want to look for him, just because we try to get him, we take him to rehab, he backslides and says, no, he doesn't want, he has to just go back to Kayole. So yes, people are really trying to get out of that. Like if you go to Kayole right now, it's different from how I was, because people have started small business. But this gang of people who are still in drugs, what can we do to such people? Like, yeah.
I don't know. I am very strong opposer of drugs, and something I usually ask myself. I don't use any drugs, by the way. Something I usually ask myself: why exactly do people get into drugs or maybe alcoholism? Because you'd imagine, or rather, you'd think that for something that you can actually see has a very bad impact on someone's life, health, finances, it's something that you'd work hard to stay away from. And for the case of the poor people, why do you think someone has like little to go on and they use all that for a fix? I really don't get the rationale behind that. Maybe Brenda, you can help because you're the brain person in this one.
Thank you, AK. So I was just actually trying to share with you guys a link about like everything. It says everything you think you know about addiction is wrong. I like what Tina said earlier because it really describes it. You see, the way most young people do not find that opportunity to really connect as a result of how our okay, so like the way a lot of our community is absent, like they're struggling to just meet needs. There's no that moment of connection. They're also struggling to run away from like the situations of like their lives. They don't connect with their children, you say. So there's a lot of like that child violence and all that, and youth feeling like they're unwanted, they're not a part of the society. So, and now these gangs being available because that's the only place where they find a space of connection. And there's the whole guilt, and it's just a lot of emotional issues around just being in a society that has the struggles. However, I think the best way to go about it is to use actually those gangs for positive influence. And I've seen a lot of such groups in like in the ghetto areas in Nairobi. For instance, there's this group called Nainami. This is a group of young people who like they do a town tour in Nairobi, and they just share with you your stories. So like by bringing those kind of people, young people together and helping them connect, you help them like not to go to the drugs, because all addictions as a result of lack of connection. That's what they say, and it doesn't matter whether it is drugs, like actual drugs, or it's actually behaviors. But then these patterns of connections, some of it are just societal. For instance, in Kenya, or most of the African countries, we suffer from historical traumas such as colonization, and we have patterns that have continued to be propagated by like education system that has continued to propagate attitudes of slave master relationships. And so this really denies us the opportunity to connect healthily, and that's why it's easier to look out to the drugs, and it's a common problem among youth all over the world. So I think the more we find ways of utilizing the connection between the youth, the more we are going to be able to better utilize, like to limit or reduce the addiction problem. My 2 cents, but that needs a lot of I just wanted to give a brief. I don't know if I answered you, AKA.
In a way, yes. The wanting to relate with some people. And also there's something you mentioned on the ghettos, as Tina was calling them, that you find those people have some strong sense of community, which I think in this case would be because they just share a common struggle or something like that. So that's why maybe they'd feel like they have to do things together, they have to fight their way out together and such. Because I'd imagine in a neighborhood where everyone is getting by fine, the motivation to come together will be for very different reasons, as opposed to a situation like which Tina was explaining, where they have to come together and like pull each other up so that they can go together.
If you're born in
Makes
the
lots of
ghetto,
sense.
yeah, if you're born, raised, bred in the ghetto, definitely you'll have a different mindset. But like what Brenda said earlier, it's very good if you're blessed to travel the world and see. Your mentality will change automatically. Like I told you earlier, I was among the chosen few who got scholarships, and I am very thankful. To date, I even tell my nieces and nephews, when you travel, you stop thinking that you're in the worst situation ever. Someone else in Mombasa is in a is even in the worst situation than someone in Soweto, Kayole. So when you see someone in, not that it's good to see someone in our situation, but when you see someone in another situation that you think it's worse, at least you'll have that thing that you want to grow. No? So personally, that changed me. Like the thing you just said about mentality, it really changed my mental health, because I got a chance to work in Kilifi. I also got a chance to work in Mombasa, Ukunda, when I was just after I dropped campus, that is. So it really paved so many ideas in my head that I came back to Nairobi. I started a business. Like what AK said earlier, that you can drop. You you came out of poverty, then you find yourself back in poverty. My business felt big time. I was frustrated, but then I got people who hold my hand. It's not where I want it to be, but it's at least it's somewhere. I can pay my bills with it. So someone can come out of ghetto and then from, let's say, poverty,
Okay.
and then
Thank you,
find
sis.
yourself back in poverty.
We went off on a tangent because you went around, so
Oh, my
No,
net is
actually,
so.
it wasn't a tangent. It's very much what we were supposed to be discussing anyway.
okay.
So, for a change, actually, we did go for a tangent. Normally, the tangent is what we usually do.
Yeah. Anyway, I think the other guys can chime in.
Mm.
Tina had us off to a good start.
Oh, that was true. So, if I may ask, what does anybody think of the idea behind the universal basic income as a way of alleviating poverty? Anybody got something?
Stop doing that. Sorry, gosh.
Okay, Tina.
Just give me 1 minute. Two
Oh,
minutes. I'll be
okay. I
back.
thought you wanted to chime in.
No, I'm just 1 minute. My net is acting up. You can hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Let me continue. I think it's a very ambitious project because if you see what it prescribes, I don't know if it's like being a service provider who is out to do so much with nothing in return, so to speak, because I'd imagine, actually, just in relation to this, I've been hearing Nairobi has water shortages. And even before this time, wow, before this time, I think water shortages in our country has not been something new. Around the world, we have many countries which suffer the same issues. So with the universal basic income, I think it will be quite hard. I don't know, maybe if the dollar billionaires came together and together with some smart people to devise ways to actually roll out such a program, because if you look at it, I don't know if I've gotten this right, but there's a definition that says a guaranteed, no strings attached recurring payment to every member of society sized to meet basic needs. Essentially, it's food maybe and shelter and clothing. I think for one, the kind of systems you'd need to address that will be a challenge really in places such as our country, because I don't trust that we've gotten to a point where we have a proper system to know how people are faring on, because I think for the most part is if you can get a camera shown in your face, then maybe you will get lucky to get some help. But if you can't have that, you're not going to get any help.
But I don't know if you guys have known, but this is a project that has actually happened in Kenya. So it's not. But let me post a link to one of the projects. They're actually people getting about what 25 cents per adult per day. So a family of 2 people, 2 adults, which is what you find in a typical rural setting. They're getting about $1.50 for the family.
Oh, okay. You had said 75 cents, and I was thinking, is that Kenyan shillings? Because if it was Kenyan shillings, I'd be shocked. But yeah, okay. Wait, let me just check the link. But is it
I think
a Kenyan government initiative or
no.
No. Not
It's
yet.
an NGO.
Exactly. Not a Nigerian.
I think Give Directly was an exploration, sort of like what they were trying to do. Like it's like all these philanthropists trying to come together and to shift how they give their money. One of the things they look at is one, they want to know, if you give somebody money, just money, how do you influence? Is it just the mentality that they have that makes them spend the money the way they do, or that if they had a consistent source of income, it would change their attitude and they would actually utilize it differently? And they're starting to see like different ways in which it is helping the individuals actually. Even though yes, some people will drink the money, but giving people money are not like, usually philanthropy, usually there will be NGOs that are attached to those communities. They'll receive the money, they'll give this proposal, these people need food, then you'll go ahead and buy them food. But you see, like if you give this person money, their priorities may be different. You see, maybe you think it's housing they need, and then they will think that no, that housing I can live with the way it is, but I want to have, like, you just give them a certain level of freedom. So that was one of the things. And then also I'm saying like philanthropists are also trying to look more into like more elements beyond like, especially not economy, environmental effects. And now I think they're going to use this because it's a longitudinal study. There are people who are given money for 1 year, another one for 2 years, then another one I think for 10 years. Then they will evaluate to see actually whether just having a certain level of income, basic, that is consistently available, is going to shift how the attitudes of people and the poverty levels in certain environments. Yeah.
The Give Direct initiative, I've seen it in Luo Nyanza, in my rural area. It really helped a lot. People are given like 100,000, but in not the whole amount of it, and they were being told on what to do with that money. But some people, like, they didn't take it. They were claiming it's not a good money. It's blood money. So they were claiming
Wait,
it's juju.
okay. I think actually that brings up another point about poverty, because what you just said, I just thought maybe the poor sometimes might also be poor, in information, because here you are trying to give someone help and they spit in your face and tell you maybe they feel like, how can you just have something to give away that you probably didn't get it the right way? So I think that's actually another thing we should tackle.
Not really spitting on their faces, but they were not given the right information, because, like, let's say people from, like, Nyanza is big, so people from the southern part, they were told another totally different story, that this is the money which the government used to do what. So when it came to this other side of our side, you get like grammars, they didn't take it. But if you have a child who's in Nairobi and knows these things, they'll call their parent and tell them, hey, take that money, develop yourself. So there are some people who actually build houses. I was so shocked when I went to Shags. I got to see people building houses. They dug wells. They did so many things. But those who didn't take it, they still claim to date that money is voodoo, that their children will die with time. So I think they were not given the right, they were not educated well about that money, but it really came and helped a few families in my rural area. It can work only if you're educated about it.
That's interesting.
I think nobody wants to receive anything for free. And I think if you're giving, receiving, by the way, is more difficult than giving. That's what most people don't believe. But receiving is harder than giving. And if you're just continuously receiving, it kind of puts you at a vulnerable space, like mentally, not necessarily like tangible vulnerabilities. So I think if you're going to do like a universal basic income, then there has to be a system that creates utility out of people. Otherwise, that's how, and I think the reason why some people were not told about it, it is part of the study. And I think that what you're sharing, Tina, is just like information that just builds onto that study. Yeah.
If you look at the link, they did what is called a scientific study, which might actually result in poverty for some others. They're dividing people into 4 groups. One group who don't receive anything, a second group who receive for 12 years, a third group who only receive for 2 years, and a fourth group who receive one big figure, and that's it. A lot of people have been pushing for UBI worldwide, to be honest. That should be something that I think should be done. The people who have the muscle to do it outside of people like Bill Gates, what are they called? Governments. But my question here was more like, do we think this can help alleviate the effects of poverty, or alleviate poverty, or even maybe chase it out?
I think it can help because I've seen the Give Direct. It really helped a lot in my village area. Even people now stopped, like, they stopped relying on their children back in the city. They formed groups after the Give Direct. They formed groups where they help each other. So they got someone who went there and educated them, those who were willing to be educated. Those who didn't want to get educated, they're still there asking for help. But personally, I think it can help if you're given the right information about it.
I'm not sure how, because I think the question is about the sustainability of such a program and if it will actually achieve its goal. Maybe I feel two ways about it. That on one hand, I can see how over a certain period of time, like Tina was sharing, if someone had the ability to build their own house out of such a program, then you can see that with the right information or with the proper guidance on how to use such money, that it could actually get somewhere. But on the other side, I'm just thinking, what if it creates a system of dependence where some people actually might feel if they have an income, they might slack on developing themselves, and then for whatever reasons, the funding could be cut off, or maybe the project might feel that we've done our time. Maybe it's time to adopt something else, or it's time to call off the project because we've been investing in this for 20 years now. So we feel like 2 decades are enough, and maybe some people are still over reliant on that program. And like Brenda was saying, receiving kind of makes someone feel some type of way. I think in this situation, you'll find that when someone is receiving, like they have, let me call it a guaranteed source of income that they don't actually have to work for. Over a period of time, if they don't invest it well, maybe it could actually fail, and it will have solved the poverty problem for a short while. And then after that, if the program goes away, you still have to deal with some level of poverty.
So you don't think it might actually enable people to like build beyond the basic minimum? Because what they're doing here is looking at, this is the estimated minimum that you need to survive, giving you basically that. They're not like giving you more huge
Yeah,
amounts of money.
exactly.
They're
So
giving
I
you what
feel
they
like,
think is the basic minimum you need to survive.
yeah.
So,
So I feel
in theory, you should not be able to afford luxuries and stuff like that.
exactly. So I think it's like a band-aid to a problem. A good band-aid though, because I mean, if you can help someone who, get food and shelter for a long enough period of time, then you're helping them. But beyond that, maybe it may not be sustainable enough because it's not giving you more than what you need.
What about
But
the
they
Yeah.
trickle down effects?
they actually won't give you that money, like all of it. They give you a portion of it. They come and see what you've done with the money, if it's something productive or not productive. They usually come. They have people who go and see. You tell them, I sent my child to school. This is or I built this. So they won't just give you 500,000. Someone will die. You can't just go and give someone 500,000 and they did not even touch the 1,000 bob in their life. They will die of excitement.
Yeah, I think that's how if people with money are going to give poor people money, they think about such things. But the issue is, and to answer the question about the ripple down effect, I think if the program also involves financial advice and such things, that's when maybe you might find some people, like if you're getting an allowance of $1 and your expenditure is say 65 or 75 cents of that dollar, then you can whatever you do with the rest is maybe based on the information you have, or rather how you think you should use that money. But beyond that, if you lack the information on how to manage that money, I think that's the other problem. Even if the guys from the foundation are working on ensuring accountability or proper use of that money. So if it doesn't go with that kind of advice or support, then it probably won't be a sustainable way to run such a program.
AKA, I have a comment. I don't know if any of you people have had. Kwanza, I'm just wondering why Ngao Mutuku, Anthony Kerry, John Diao, and Avionics are not talking. Kwanza Avionics is just some on the keyboard. But my comment, yeah,
Some people
my
love to listen.
comment, they love to listen. Okay, so see, we will have a play, like some of us like to talk. If you don't stop us,
We will
you will
talk.
be in
Gosh.
trouble. Yeah, but yeah, so I'll try limit my talking. But I was just thinking, if you were, I remember when I was in campus, there was a time like I used to dream if I get a job of 5K, my life would have changed like a big time, and 5K meant so much. Yeah, and then over time now you go for an interview and like a certain like higher amount beyond that like I wouldn't take that. And it's like just how perceptions of what basic is really would change over time. I imagine if, for instance, ulikuwa like you were being given certain amount constantly. I think if I was receiving, like when I started receiving help, Maze, it made a big difference, because suddenly I started having needs and meeting needs that I didn't think that I needed, like lotion, roll on, things that were never like part of my vocabulary. So I think that happens. That will happen a lot. Like if you give people basic income, like if you have a universal basic income, then over time it will start changing how much is really basic. Secondly, I think also which is on the opposite side and is a possible opportunity. If you imagine that time when you don't have a job and everything looks like it's just a mess, and like you are not eating well, like even just going to drop that CV and doing that is just, yeah, it's just crazy. And especially young people right now experience this a lot. And I think if you give them a basic income, you might give them a motivation to like just have the hope that, you know, at least you ate something, now go out and do something, rather than the way for a long time with there's just that struggle to continue, just receiving. And then there's just this theory also that do not do for someone what they can do for themselves. I said it again last time, but I think it's really an important thing, because if you just give money and you do not work towards helping or allowing people to utilize their own intelligence, then I think there will be a kind of problem over time, because there will be just a dependency pattern. Yeah.
Okay, before I let other people talk, because we are hogging, I think, yeah, I agree with you, and that's why I was saying I'd hope that with such a system or a foundation, they have, you know, people who advise on financial matters, and I see Karuga has just joined us. So if we have people who advise the foundation on how to disseminate information on the proper financial strategies, then I think if it lasts long enough, then someone could actually we'd have a situation where there is less poverty in this case. And the example you used about if someone is given a certain amount, the chances of them having saving something from that, I think it's true. If only because I wouldn't want to assume that everyone who's receiving money knows how to utilize it well, because many times you hear there's people who have very big paychecks at the end of the month, but somehow they still go broke. I think even if someone is receiving an income to help them, now in this case a poor guy, they might still not spend the money well if they lack the proper information on how to manage that money. Because if you give someone who knows, or rather is assured of another donation, let me call it that way, tomorrow, maybe they might not think beyond like beyond a few months or something like that, simply because they feel that this system is here to take care of us. So maybe I will just sit around and wait for things to work out. But I think on the flip side, many people, I'd want to assume that if you start like this and you give someone money and they don't have to, work hard for it, and it gives them a chance to, or rather it puts their mind at ease for them to explore other things and maybe pursue other things that could generate more income for them. So yeah, that's it. I think the other guys can chime in.
But that brings up the question of if, say, okay, right now it's an NGO, so that's definitely not really long-term sustainable. But say if a government, Kenya government, for example, managed to find a way of ensuring that people who live below a certain basic minimum, whatever it may be defined with, are boosted up to the point where they have to run with they have to at least earn the basic minimum. You seem to say from your talk that you don't think it would actually result in really improved living around the place.
Yeah, the reason they fear that it may not improve because if it's not implemented properly. I have this illustration in my head, but I can't put it in words. It's like you have a certain
For
bar.
example, think of it. What would be a proper implementation?
As you're giving someone the money, you're also encouraging them to pursue other things rather than just saying that whoever is poor or whoever doesn't have this and that will receive money and they'll be good. Because Tina gave a certain example. She was speaking about how, yes, she's coming from a place where there's other people like her, but for some reason we can see she's here, the other people are not here. And she said 3/4 of them have died, or so it tells you that even though the program might be good, the issue is how people deal, or rather the mindsets of people. Because if it's helping, yes, it will help some people to rise above to even astronomical levels, but the problem is with the other lot that you may find are not exploiting this system, let me call it a service well, because they are assured of money, so maybe they might not do other things, or they might not manage that money well. So I think that's the problem that I have with such a system being rolled out without taking into account such a scenario.
Personally,
What
I
about?
think.
No, go on to
People should not be given money. Like before even, there's an African say that says, before your neighbor comes to knock at your, before you go and borrow salt from your neighbor's door, at least make sure you have it in your house. Yeah, it's in my native language, so I'm trying to translate it. But my point is, the government, I will hesitate on the government for the rest of my life. The government should start programs. Like you get this money they give to the old people. Some are receiving, some are not receiving. You receive if you know, basically someone told me you only receive that money if you know someone who knows someone who can connect you to get that money. So I think instead of giving people this money, they can form, like, they can put up organizations like good hospitals, number one. Number two, they can, not everybody gets an opportunity to go to the university. Not that you didn't pass your Form 4, or maybe some even didn't finish school. So they can put up things like craft things. You get what I'm saying? As in, not basically something that can educate you, like you can become a carpenter and start something from that. So instead of us waiting for that universal money, our government, which I am 100% sure is capable of forming such organizations, should form such organizations so that when the universal donors come, they can just say, let us expand this hospital and put a big ICU or a big children ward, rather than expecting. The minute you start expecting, you will become lazy. Like, I'm speaking for myself. If someone just said today they will be giving me 500,000 every month, hi, my life is sorted. Will I go to work? I won't go to work. Will I wake up early? I won't wake up early. Everything is sorted. But when I'm being told you have to go do this here and here, at least gain some knowledge and start your own thing, it can work. Even before we get the universal donors, we can just start with our small counties, with our small villages. That's why many people whom I know, they are not even they don't want to wait for the government. They want to start this organization by themselves. They go back to their home places. They put a small thing like I told you earlier, there's an organization called Kipawa. It's just a small organization that brings about youth. Those who want to act, they'll be told you can do this, without waiting for the donor. So when the donor comes in, he finds us, we are somewhere, at least they can donate. But just giving money, it won't work.
SS, you had to say something, but before you continue, I think actually Tina said something, but if you actually look at it, it's interesting. It's more like supporting people indirectly. Maybe we have a situation where people have water so that we don't have the issues that we have now. Like people are guaranteed of access to clean water, have affordable or free healthcare for certain services, in a way that you're making a certain aspect of their life easier so that they can focus on other things. Because I'm assuming someone doesn't have to worry about water, like such small things, or maybe you've built enough marketplaces, you've built enough schools and such, so that they can access those and work on other things. But given that it's basic income, I think that's aimed directly at supporting exactly what I'm saying should be supported indirectly. So there's that.
Alternatively, what about work for money? I mean, given that we trade always about something else. What about work for money kind of thing, where instead of guaranteeing universal basic income, they guarantee universal basic employment?
I think, yeah, that will actually be a very sustainable solution to this problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Here in Kenya, now people are really trying to preach on self-employment rather than waiting to be employed. So I'm a youth, give me basic tools that will make me do this. You know, like Brenda said earlier, there are so many opportunities in Africa, plenty. It's just that we don't have, like, we don't, it's not even drive. I don't, it's just, even there's no word to describe it. But if you take my hand and tell me, I'll teach you farming, the mentality of like you have to just be employed should be a thing of the past. Like personally, that's what I think. Yes, there are those who will be employed. Not all of us can be business people. But like I told you, where I came from, you were lucky enough to even finish Form 4. Just have that basic knowledge, that basic English where you can tell someone, good morning, good morning. At least you can introduce yourself. You can hear if there's an SMS written to your mother, you can read on her behalf. So long as you know this basic English, basic Kiswahili, you don't go past Form 1. Class 8 is enough for you, because at least from class 1 to class 8, it's free. So your parents will be like, they won't pay school fee, they'll just buy you uniform. So from 1 to Form 4, it's either you become street smart. I have seen people who are in day schools, they sell even water so that they can go to school. During the night, they have employed themselves. During the day, they are going to school. So if you're born in such situation, there you're just lucky to even finish your Form 4 and go to university. What can you do to such a person? Will you employ them, or will you show them? Will you show them or give them tools or skills to form their stuff, like farming or do any other thing? That's my question. It's a question.
I have a problem with that kind of approach, because we are yes, it's one thing to say everybody can be an entrepreneur, but in a market where everybody is a seller, you literally have almost no producers, and effectively
I'm not
almost no
saying
buyers.
everybody is an entrepreneur. Thanks for listening. I'm saying you're born in a situation where you're born in a you're like the people I've been raised with. I was lucky enough, I've told you earlier, I was very lucky I got a scholarship. If you're not even lucky enough to even finish class 8, mostly ladies don't even reach class 5. When your parents see you've already grown up, your boobs have started forming, you're married off. It happens in Nairobi. I'm not lying. If you're not lucky enough to get a scholarship, what will happen to you?
But
Your
I
parents
think
can only take you as far as class 8.
the approach SS was talking about was maybe if there is better education system and a high absorption rate of people from campus and polytechnics and all those, like a situation where it's a market where employability is high, and it goes to support what you're just saying, Tina, because if you know you're going to a woodwork, don't know, call it a carpentry polytechnic, you know that when you come out of there, there's an industry to employ you. There's just different avenues. I think that's the approach that SS is talking about. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm done speaking. I wasn't.
Anyway, I got what you're saying. I understand totally. Though you've not even answered my question. Because I'm saying, yes, this person, like, here in Kenya, I'm speaking here in Kenya, you have to at least have that form for certificate to at least be seen as a person. If you don't have that one, nobody will even employ you even as a cleaner. It is that hard because education is everything. Yeah,
I think Tina. I think Tina, the education, the way it is, I think sometimes it's overrated.
Exactly my point.
Like
It's overrated.
like having a form 4, I don't say like.
Let me just finish, please. But you
Yes,
see,
please
it's
go
very
ahead.
hard. Like personally, I am really speaking about myself. When I left campus because I had to leave because I had siblings who were looking up to me. I couldn't even get a simple reception job. They were telling me you have to have at least a diploma. And customer care is something that even if you go to training right now, you'll just know it the next day. You get what I'm saying? It's not something. It's not rocket science. But you would apply for these small jobs, but you won't get even promotion. Just being a promoter in the supermarket, they will tell you, at least have a diploma or something. So that made me even go back and do this small certificate so that at least I can get a job. At least I can get something too. You get what I'm saying? But someone else does not even have that. They finished class 8 or class 6. Where do they go from there? What do they do from there?
I hear your experience. I hear your personal experience. And yes, I think it's the experience for many young people today, even those who are graduates, just because they are actually, I don't know if I should say there are no jobs. Yeah. And I think the question that was presented or posed earlier over was it universal employment? It will create a shift from that mentality, whereby just looking at a Form 4 certificate as enough is really still a very, I think, a very maladaptive mentality, because if you look at just how Form 4 certificates work, they do not directly guarantee actually a transfer of skill sets. And that's where the challenge is. But I imagine if for instance, those people like in certain areas, for instance, those who are receiving, like in your area in Nyanza, who've been receiving the universal basic income, if these people were able to come together because they have land as a utility that they had, and they create like a more effective utilization of that land and create the jobs within that land for those people depending on their skill sets, I imagine that would sort of improve the income level, at the same time utilize people at different levels depending on their skill sets, depending on their knowledge, and also not limiting education and learning to just a school system, but to avenues that are available. For instance, in this age, education can just yeah, okay, sawa. Yes, Avionics, welcome.
Thank you. You've answered me. You guys, tomorrow is my work day. I have to like leave, but it was such a good discussion. I hope we'll have another one soon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Tina.
Okay.
We have this every Friday, so we hope you will join us.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Avionics, take the floor.
JT, now you have the chance. Okay, that doesn't seem to be working.
He got cold feet.
Uh-huh.
Sean, Kennedy, Ngao, John, Ngamutuko, I haven't heard your voice.
Oh, he's been on and off.
Well, I just arrived, so I'm still trying to find my bearings.
But this
You're
is
lost.
this is up your alley, Kennedy. We are trying to discuss poverty, its alleviation, it's whether we actually need to alleviate it in the first place.
Yeah.
It's more of an, I would think it is more of an economic problem than it is of a, oh yeah, it's also a social problem in a way, but I think it's got economic roots in it.
Yeah.
Which puts it exactly up your alley.
Yeah. So, what are the top suggestions for its alleviation? I had something to do with universal income.
Yes, there's a UBI, the universal basic
yeah.
income.
Yeah.
There's an option. There's also a suggestion of the universal basic employment.
Mm. Like the Soviet Union.
Well, one is Soviet Union, one is some other funny fellows. But yeah, it's still open on what ideas we're looking at.
Okay. Well, I think there's only one formula for the alleviation of poverty, and that is efficient production. Because when you think about it, poverty is simply inefficient production. The reason a worker in Bangladesh, a worker in Norway produces in 10 days roughly the same amount of wealth that a worker in Bangladesh produces in a year is because the worker in Germany is far more efficient than the worker in Bangladesh. And that's because the worker in Germany has access to capital goods, efficient factories. They have efficient management systems and the such. So really, I think when you talk about alleviating poverty, you're talking about capital acquisition. And historically, the most efficient way to increase the capital stock is free enterprise. It's not redistribution. Well, if you're a poor country, really, you don't even have anything to go around. So redistribution is not going to be very effective. You need to create the wealth, assuming that redistribution is what it costs to begin with. You have to create the wealth so that you can pass it around. If you have no wealth, then you have nothing to redistribute. And the only way to create wealth efficiently is to acquire capital, which can only happen in a free enterprise system. So I think that the most urgent task for poor countries is to remove all the barriers they have to wealth creation and free enterprise. And poor countries, as a rule, have the most barriers to wealth creation. If you look at tariffs, if you look at the ease of doing business, the poor countries are at the very bottom. The rich countries are at the very top. Therefore, I think that is the most urgent task for Kenya and other poor countries.
What is free enterprise?
Well, free enterprise, the free exchange of goods and services.
Yeah, in fact, I would come to that. The rich countries have some of the largest tariff barriers against foreign goods at the moment.
Well, not really.
Try to sell in the US, for example.
It's harder to sell in Kenya or Malawi.
Really?
Yeah, if you look at the countries with the highest, if you look at the 10 countries with the highest tariff rates, nearly all of them are in the third world.
Yes, the ones with the highest tariff rates, but the ones with the non-tariff barriers seem to all be in the first world. Okay, the largest number of all. The non-tariff barriers.
Yes. Yeah, and when it comes to non-tariff barriers, it's really hard to make comparisons because they're not quantifiable. So you can't say, if you're talking about tariffs, you can say this country has 15%, another has 8%. Non-tariff barriers are much harder to point a finger at. However, as a rule, it is much easier to do business in the wealthy countries than in the poor countries.
I think when the wealthy countries are they're trying to protect their own, how can I call it?
Right.
Their system such that they create wealth, because you've been talking about wealth creation. So the more they do things the way they want it to be done and create more wealth for them, the more they are accumulating more money, rather than just saying that free and open market, that's how you get your market flooded by anything and everything, or even ruin the fighting chances you have for developing yourself. I think that's, or rather I see that's how they're doing it, so that they can promote what they're selling and generate more wealth for themselves.
Now, interestingly, it is the poor countries who have more of that. I think if you ever try to import something into Kenya, you know that the number of levies and taxes you have to pay is astonishing.
Yeah. It is quite,
right? Take sugar, for example. The sugar industry in Kenya is one of the most heavily protected industries. Actually, forget sugar. The aviation industry in Africa, it is extremely, extremely protected. There are so many barriers. And it is one of the worst performing in the world. It is actually quite tragic because it is only in Africa where flying remains ridiculously expensive. In Asia, in Europe, everywhere else in the world, even in Latin America, flying is very affordable. But you come to Africa, just think of the distance between Kenya, Nairobi, and Dar es Salaam. It's a very short distance, but you may pay nearly as much as it costs to fly to Dubai, right? Because
Actually,
our aviation
from actual figures, Nairobi and Tebe is more expensive than Nairobi, Dubai.
Yeah.
That is actual figures I've checked.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so when you protect industries, you remove every incentive they have to become efficient. And that is why nearly every African airline is if not bankrupt, on the brink of bankruptcy. Competition is always good, whether it's domestic or foreign. So anytime you protect domestic industries, you're just setting them up for failure, and you're punishing consumers because it is they who have to food the higher costs.
I think the kind of protection I was talking about was we discussed this the other week when we were discussing the problems facing Africa is about prioritizing your products first over that's the kind of protection I'm talking about, in the sense that if we are producing coffee, we should coffee or maize, we should first look at that first before we go to Uganda's coffee and maize. Like, we prioritize our products first, our produce and all that, before we look to another country for their imports and all that, because I'd like to think that when we have the same capabilities as a neighboring nation to produce our own food, the more we produce our own and have all those value addition industries and all that, it's much easier to develop and create more chances for employment, innovation, and all that before we start looking to other markets for their products. And regarding the taxation and all that, to some extent, I've usually had this theory that maybe the reasons we pay high for certain goods is because this market has yet to be introduced to certain products, because sometimes I see these countries in Asia and North America, and some in South America, they transact a lot, and some of their products, you find that their shipping is not highly taxed as getting something from the UK down here to Africa. And I think it's because maybe our market is not open to consuming certain goods, or we are yet to reach a level where we need those products much. So that's why those who can use those products are taxed highly.
Well, you see, if you're producing coffee as efficient, more efficiently than Uganda, their coffee, you can compete on even terms, right? You only need to protect your industry, which is not as efficient as theirs. So the only industries that require protection are inefficient industries, which don't really enrich a nation. As a matter of fact, they only impoverish it, because the prices that consumers are deprived of the benefit of lower prices. So you protect an inefficient industries and you simply compel consumers to pay the higher prices than they would otherwise. That doesn't seem like a very good way to develop strong industries, assuming you must have industries to begin with. Why not simply allow them to sink or swim? After all, you must be efficient at least one thing, right?
I think
let
the
things you can, yeah, let the industries that are efficient continue producing. Let the ones that are inefficient die.
I'm speaking in the sense that you focus your energies on growing your local, let me call them your local industries, not that you're just protecting them at any cost. If it's not producing a certain quality of things, then maybe you cut it off. But it's about investing in developing your own industries and giving them a chance to improve. Because I was watching a certain video about a certain miller in the Lake region. He said he's been around for quite a while, and I was imagining. Okay, we have some weird feedback.
I need to.
Hello?
Yeah, the feedback is gone now. Okay, I was saying by protecting and improving and developing your local industries, you're just giving them a chance to improve.
Well, the sugar industry in Kenya has been protected for so long.
Yeah.
It's falling apart. It's actually dead for all intents and purposes.
But I think in this case, it hasn't been. It's because of certain misappropriations that I think if that's not how things were working, like in the perfect scenario is Mumia's sugar would be, so let me use an example of Mumia's sugar would be so big that we'll even be exporting our own sugar. But because it's being protected for the wrong reasons, that's why it is where it is. But I'm talking about protecting an industry for the good reasons, like you protect an industry that develops certain goods so that it improves and becomes more efficient, like it becomes it's like you're championing it to be the best so that you can even sell it out there, rather than protecting an industry so that you and your family can be the monopoly. It's not about being the monopoly, but protecting it so that you can improve the quality of products or services that the industry is producing.
Well, these decisions are being made by politicians, so I think we can expect them to put their political interests first, above any other consideration. And that's been a problem with protectionism, really. The minute you start protecting an industry, you cannot then, when it becomes obvious that the effort has failed, you cannot just withdraw your protection, because you create a very strong independent constituency, and every time you try to withdraw protection, there will be opposition, there will be resistance. That is why in the US, for example, the steel industry has been protected for, I think, since the 19th century. Our own sugar industry has been protected for several decades. It is very obvious that the industry is not improving at all. In fact, it's deteriorating, but there is no political will to withdraw that protection, because the minute you try to withdraw the protection, you're accused of killing industries, even though they're already dead. So protectionism creates very serious and very intractable moral hazards, which almost always end up being impossible to resolve. At least politically, it's never seems to happen.
Well, in a
No, I would
situation
ask.
like that, yeah, I see your point.
Yes.
I would ask: is there a way of protecting an industry, or even a part of an industry, and still find a way of creating efficiencies in that industry?
And that's what I was actually thinking. Not just protecting it for selfish reasons, but to improve it rather.
Yes, but without the
Well,
competition, how does it raise the efficiency? How does it even gauge itself on its efficiency?
And I think by protectionism, in this case, you aren't actually imposing very harsh, what do you call it, barriers to other competitors, but rather you are prioritizing and ensuring that if there's another competitor, you're actually improving your product compared to the other competitor, so that the consumer can actually see a reason why to buy your goods over the competitors. That's way I'd want it to be implemented, rather than saying you cannot buy a computer part from this side of the country, you have to buy computers that were made in a Kenyan university. Not in such a way, but rather, if you're going to make computers in Kenya, or computer parts, let me call it that, you're going to ensure that they have a fighting chance in the market with other competitors, rather than imposing very harsh restrictions compared to while your product is inferior compared to the competitors.
Mm.
Yeah.
So where forward? What is possible? I mean, we must admit that poverty has become a more or less endemic thing around here. Not okay. We claim it's endemic. Where forward? What is possible in the current environment?
Well, some of the things we need to do cost very little. For example, one of the reasons why it is very hard to create wealth in Africa and in most of the poorer parts of the world is because our property rights are very weak. In places like Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, you have a huge fraction of the population living on lands that they don't have title to, right? So what that means is that that land is dead capital. I think I remember reading there is something like $16 trillion of untitled real estate in the third world. So that is dead capital. It means you cannot use your lands to borrow money and start a business. It means you cannot put up permanent structures on that land because they could be demolished at any time. So I think if we merely started by strengthening property rights, that would free a lot of dead capital in the poorer countries of the world. And that would make a very big difference in terms of how much capital we could summon to increase our efficiency.
Anybody else? You now look at solutions, not the questions. You look at the solutions.
I actually think what Kennedy has said is covers for most solutions, because if you have land that you have legal rights to it that you can use for production and all that, I think that would be a major step But on the other hand, I feel like as it is right now, with the current situation, maybe even our settlement patterns, it's quite hard, given that we've strayed too far away from a situation where we would have managed our land better. I think it would be hard to track back and try to, to redeem that the money from such property, because I imagine it will have to be surveyed, which is quite expensive, and allocated to various people. So I don't think that will be an avenue that we could pursue right now. But on the other hand, I think what I usually see around mostly will be improving our business operations. I think that will be a quick fix as opposed to something as major as reevaluating our land management. But I think for the land management, it will be easier to do in the urban areas. In urban areas, I think it's much easier to redeem what we can as we work maybe towards the rural areas. But I think for now, focusing on business, that would be a better way or a better approach to achieve certain things. And then from there, if there is a lot of business going on, there will be a lot of innovation and all that. So I think that would be the better approach.
What about if I look at it? This COVID-19 crisis seems to have sort of shown our underbelly. We are suddenly being in a situation where our growth figures, which were being touted as one of the best in Africa, seem to have been killed almost overnight by one small pandemic. Our middle class and low class have become almost one thing in under 3 months. Doesn't that imply somewhere we had some kind of fictitious, how would I call it? Fictitious figures underlying our so-called growth and prosperity.
Yeah, I think that has always been a persistent issue with, I don't know if it's a transparency issue or accountability issue, because if you cannot report the right thing, and maybe it is done for good reasons, because maybe you don't want people to panic, but if you're not doing it for the right reasons, I think that also fools people into thinking that they are operating in a good environment. But if we had a situation where maybe when we say the people at the top, to mean the business people, the entrepreneurs, if those guys had the real information about the market environment, I think there will be better decisions and maybe solutions geared towards improving the business environment, rather than giving this whole facade that the country is doing well when in actual sense it's broke. And there's such, and also there's the other issue of how we invest our money, and in this case donor money, because I think for taxes, that's highly misappropriated if it's even collected properly, because I think we have the weakest systems.
If I may stop you there, there was an article just I think about 2-3 days ago where the World Bank noted that something close on to, I think it was coming to almost 60% of the donor aid for COVID was stashed in foreign accounts somewhere. So I don't think even the aid money is, how would you put it, well taken care of either.
Exactly, and that's what I was talking about, the transparency between certain institutions, because if we have governing bodies that are ensuring that our money is being managed well. Maybe that on one side we'll have sorted our issues, because I think for us the issue is I don't think it's even twofold, because on one hand you're getting money to improve yourself. On the other hand, the systems that are supposed to be using that money properly are being robbed clean. So if we can't manage our money, like we don't have systems to manage our money, then we can't even think of ways to use that money. And I think that's also another problem. Because if we had a situation where we receive a certain amount of money and we know from the very start that we are going to develop a certain kind of infrastructure because this infrastructure guarantees us this outcome, then that would be good. But in a situation where we get money, the money is misappropriated for whatever reasons, you find that it's hard to even know what thing to solve first, because when you're trying to solve an issue on this side, there's also an underlying issue on the other side. So I think the overarching problem will be the rampant corruption. And even I think right now there's this website that used to track how much money we're losing to corruption. I don't know if it's still there, but we've grown this attitude of just not caring anymore how such monies are being used, because you see a headline about lost billions, you don't get shocked a lot. So I don't know if it will be a social issue that will be the first approach to solving our problems, or an economic issue, because I feel that the social issue is more important, that people should know that if we are getting a certain amount of money, we should know it's going to be used well, rather than saying we've gotten this amount of billions to build roads, to open up areas. Because even if you have the money on paper you've received this amount of money to build roads, but you don't care about how it's being used, I don't think that's it's going to help us. So I think that the first thing to do is social enlightenment about how systems are supposed to work, so that in case of such donor fundings, or even our own income from taxation and all that we know, rather we trust the system that is going to invest these monies.
I think it's interesting you should have mentioned infrastructure, especially in Kenya. Given the last several years, we've had complaints about what should have been good infrastructure, from the railway, the standard gauge railway, which we understand ranges everything from claims that it was overcosted to claims that it was not even needed.
Yeah.
To the white elephants like the Tukwel Dam, and even highways like the Thika Highway, which, much as they're very interesting for us, don't really seem to have made economic sense in that sense. Could it also be that maybe even in infrastructure we are investing in the wrong things?
Yeah, I think there's also the aspect of investing in the wrong thing, because for one, if I might use the example of the SGR, if you look at it, the line runs next to the old one. Yet we spent a lot of money, apparently, trying to acquire land for one, which is a lot of money, and then trying to build another, like 2 lines adjacent to each other, when this existing one could have been better purposed for whatever it is. Because if we have an existing line, the first rational thing would be to try to exploit it as much as possible, as much as we have proponents of the SGR saying that it has certain economic benefits. As much as it might have that, I think the better thing to have done would have been to revamp the existing line. And then for certain projects, road projects, I've seen quite a number around the country that when you actually look at it, you don't understand the rationale behind it. Because if you're going to construct a highway between two towns that are considered rather remote and that don't exactly have so much economic benefit to the market, you'd want that money to have been invested in another project, for example, or maybe to create different economic hubs rather than trying to say you want to link the entire country. You'd focus maybe with regional hubs so that it's even easier or rather cheaper to focus your monies in a certain hub so that you develop within those hubs, and then from the money generated there, and then you start connecting these hubs as you develop. Because if you're trying to connect Mombasa to Kampala, what you're doing, I don't think you're getting anything between like the places, the areas the infrastructure project is passing. I don't see much that is being generated. So I'd rather you say you're going to develop the coastal area, make sure it's very good, vibrant, focus other monies to the north, other monies to the west, keep developing the Nairobi metropolitan. Then in turn, you find that these areas have become so sustainable and rich enough that linking them, that developing a line from Mombasa to Kampala or the LAPSET project becomes even cheaper and could even be done maybe by our own money rather than getting money from others to do it.
Okay. I've shared a link with the Kenyan corruption tracker.
Oh yeah, let me look at it.
Help guys see some
How
of
many
these
trillions?
things. Currently, it's at 8 trillion or so.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Given that this year's budget is slightly above 1 trillion, it looks like we managed to loot 8 times our yearly budget.
Budget for a decade.
Anyway, I've shared that link.
Yeah. I've seen
Please copy it before the meeting ends, because when the meeting ends, unfortunately, your data will get lost. But the interesting thing about it is that we have lost apparently something like 8 trillion in
less than a decade.
Corruption. And on the other hand, we have only about $500 billion in loans that we need to pay. So the money we've lost in corruption over this period alone seems like it would pay for a huge amount of the loans that we are looking at. I mean,
and I don't know. I see that it even stopped in 2019. Maybe someone got the dates wrong.
We're in early 2020, so maybe no new things have come out yet.
Or rather, we'd hope that.
Or rather, the information hasn't come out. Maybe the theft has happened, but the information hasn't come out. But if you look, since in 2018 alone, we have stalled projects to the tune of 15 billion.
Wow.
In the very many things. So this is projects that started, money was spent, and they're there, not finished, not used. So even from our West alone, I think we have a lot of reasons to call ourselves poor.
Yeah.
What Karuga would have called inefficiency Yes, we are apparently extremely inefficient.
And that's what I was talking about. I think that will have to be the first fix on how to manage our finances. It's like being taken to school to be taught how not to throw away your money.
How not to steal our own money.
Yeah, still is more accurate.
Anyway, if you click on some of the other links, you'll also see it still has a lot of information on some of the other monies that we've lost.
I'm actually going through the land grabbing and donations.
Yes, it is very. What's the word for it? Yeah.
And shocking.
Most of us don't realize how serious it is until you see the kind of figures that you're looking at.
Yeah, and especially given that I think it was only for, there was this time people were trying to figure out how much a billion is, and for quite a while you think that people would be motivated to do something about it, because if this is I think the earliest date here is 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Oh, 2013. Yeah, 2013. Huh? Wait. Okay.
I think there's one case also which is a bit earlier.
Yeah,
but the majority seem to be 2018, 2019, that period.
Yeah, and also I think we've heard of cases where, is it the DPP? We've been talking about prosecuting cases, but the sad thing is when you're prosecuting these, you'd imagine that they be recovered monies and all that. But if you're not seeing any recovered money and all you have is just headlines for a few days, I don't think that's even helping the situation, because if you prosecute someone for stealing 1 billion, maybe you'd expect to recover at least half of it within the period maybe they were caught. But it's like you only prosecute someone for the cameras, but the money is all gone.
No, but if you prosecute somebody for 1 billion and you give him a bond over 100 million, I mean, I don't think
that's the other thing. I think, yeah. That's the other thing, because I think also how we are fighting, can I call it crime, is another issue. Because people get away, the rich, or rather the rich thieves get away easily with such issues, as opposed to what you'd expect. You'd expect someone who's stolen 1 billion to be given such a difficult time so that you can get that money back.
Which doesn't seem to happen in this country at all.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody has any closing remarks or ideas or something?
I don't know. I feel I was actually reading. I clicked on a link and it took me to Twitter. Just looking at what is trending. I think for the longest time, and you said this in one of the meetings before, I think the first one, if not the second one, how I think our biggest problem, or rather the root of our problem, is how people are informed about these things. Either people are willingly ignorant or just choose not to act, or they feel that they don't have avenues to act. Because if you think of what the bread thing in France, was it in France? I think that would be one way to start solving our problems. How we do it, and I don't mean just going to the streets and destroying things, but rather even, I don't know if I can call it diplomatic ways of, reclaiming back some things, because I think our biggest deficiency is respecting the law, or rather upholding it. So if we start there, what I was talking about, social enlightenment, I think that's one way, or rather the best way we'd start reclaiming some of these things, or rather getting back what we need to have gotten back a while back. So I think that's what we should be looking for, ways to do that, rather than have Boniface Mwangi or some few random people on the internet just talking about this and that. Yeah, just not leaving it to Boniface Mwangi and Omtata.
But can you enlighten people who are stupid, for lack of a better word?
I think we can. I think the only issue is the resignation we've had, because I was just giving an example of myself. I used to look at this corruption tracker. When I left it, it was nowhere near this amount, but all that time it has risen to 8 trillion, which is shocking, really. So I think we just resigned.
I ask that because when I speak to what you might call the common man, he doesn't seem to think there's a problem.
Yeah, and I think that's motivated by the fact that they've resigned to faith. They're saying like, this is not working out, so why should I even try? Because they have bigger problems.
They don't seem to think it's not working out.
Yeah.
No. Hold a second, gentlemen. Could it be a different reason? How many Kenyans can even visualize a billion? There are certain figures which reach a point where they become unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, if you told me somebody stole 2 million, it's a figure you sort of like can relate with, and you can see it's a huge figure, blah blah. But when we speak of things like 10 billion, 15 billion, 8 trillion, how many of us can even visualize an impact of that thing? It becomes a myth, the kind of figure which stops having meaning even. So when you're telling a Kenyan to get outraged at 8 trillion stolen, he can't even fathom what this is.
So I think that's the other problem, and actually I think the social enlightenment would help in this sense. If you told someone that the government can actually build them a proper stall, as opposed to these makeshift vibandas that they use, I think if you showed how that is possible, then maybe someone will be able to start to reason differently. Because where I see things, we are so used to, we are comfortable. We've gotten so comfortable with certain things that we don't think there could be better, and that's the bigger problem, because many people around are just satisfied with whatever they have, so rather whatever they see. So I think that's one avenue to start exploring, because if someone can't see how 500 million could actually do a lot within a certain neighborhood, I think that's a very big problem, such that they think it's okay for someone to get away with 500 million if they're going to pay the court 100,000.
No, I don't think they even think it's okay if somebody get away with 500 million. Is that they don't even
know 500 million.
Oh. It's so huge that it becomes a fairy tale. It's like those tales of heaven and the singing angels and the cherubs on the right. It's too unreal for them to even really put a grip on it and say, yeah, this is. It's gone beyond reality for them.
I feel like it's a situation where maybe you need to like carry someone, take them to a place where things are working out. Like you take someone who's used to going to the river, you take them to a house where you can turn on your tap and get water, your shower and all that, and then tell them that if you do this and that, this is how you get it. Maybe they might be motivated to see how good it is, rather, because most people, I think it's normal for most people to walk down a hill to go to the river, as opposed to telling someone, if I put a pump down there with a few pipes, you could be getting water right in your house without having to go down the river and up 20 times or something like that. So I think that would be the tactic to use to enlighten people. How? Not quite sure.
Okay. You ready? Anything you can add on that?
Well, I think I think we're making some very compelling arguments against democracy itself. I've always thought it might be more productive to rethink democracy itself than to try to enlighten people. Like, personally, I think certain people are born, for lack of a better word, stupid. And I don't think it's possible to enlighten such people. So I'm more sympathetic to the idea of revising our democratic ideals. The very idea that anyone with a pulse should vote is just abominable. I think we should seriously consider excluding a very vast portion of humanity from decision making if they're simply not up to the task.
But if we
That's
do
one
that,
way.
we are doing it.
However, I'm sorry?
If we do that, then who is deciding
Yeah.
what is good for whom? Are we deciding what is good for them because we imagine they don't have the capacity to decide what is good for themselves?
Well, yes, I think a strong case could be made that four-fifths of humanity are not capable of making correct decisions. But even more importantly, it's you see, to the extent that they are a majority, they are making decisions for you as well. So they are deciding what's good. They're deciding what's good for you.
But how will you decide who is competent enough to
Yes, that's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
I think we could start by excluding people who don't pay taxes. That has been done in the past. People who don't own property. Anyway, it's extremely hard, really. We
because I'm also thinking it works in a situation where maybe how I'm thinking it in my head is, if we know this family, Kennedy's family, Semakula's family, AKS family, is producing a certain kind of people that we can rely on. I think in situation then it will work. But in a case where anyone can actually be good, if someone could be from a different background, but they're good in a certain way, but because we have a system that excludes them, then we can't exploit that. And on the other hand, I'm thinking if we allow everyone to have an opinion on certain things, then we're also ruining it. But I wouldn't be too quick to advocate for anything that's, at least it should be passively democratic. I think at the very least make people feel that they're involved or they can participate, because I'm thinking we are doing all this, you're trying to lock people out of making certain decisions so that you can improve their lives. The irony in that.
Well, I'm more concerned about improving mine.
No, but
to
in
the
this
extent
case,
that to the extent that they outnumber me, then they're a hindrance to that.
But
of
in
course,
this
the fact
that theirs, rather you improve yours, by improving your environment, which means when you're building a system that benefits you, you're trying to make sure that the things you depend on are working well, which means some other people.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, to the extent that the majority is not capable of making the correct decisions, then they impoverish me as well as themselves.
Mm-hmm. But don't you think it will be much easier? Okay, I haven't thought this through, but I'm just thinking. Will it be much easier to lock people out and make proper decisions, or try to involve them while making those proper decisions? In the sense that, if say you wanted to undertake a certain thing, will it be easier to like seclude a few of you and start doing something, or inform other people about this good thing that you're about to do and let them participate? Because I'm thinking even in this way, you'd be able to recruit more people who share in that vision, rather than saying the 10 of us are going to do this.
Well, if their opinion carries the same weight as mine, then whatever I'm trying to do is going to fall apart. Right?
I think.
So who decides what's good for us?
Exactly.
Who decides what?
What's good for us? Whoever us may be, we define us.
Well, to the extent that we have some common goals, it's a rather easy determination to make. For example, if you want to increase productivity, we know how to do it. We know how to go about it. We know the methods that work and those that don't. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, insofar as we have certain common objectives, which we do, I think now the question is how do we go about it? And the vast majority of people are not capable of making that call. So that's why I think they should be completely excluded from decision making.
Okay, I think that's a nice note to close on for the moment. Thank you for joining us. Next week we'll look at something else, maybe even the same thing.
Okay.
And I don't know whether the secretary has something to add to this. No, she doesn't. So thank you for joining us next week. Same time, different topic.
Yes.
We hope to meet you and then.
Okay.
Is there a talk on Sunday?
Yes, there is. The FIKA Talks is happening on Sunday. The guest will be. Wait, I think the guest will be communicated. That again will happen, and that will be also live. That will be live on Facebook. This one has been recorded, so we're not going to post the video, but we'll post the audio again on the FIKA group. I think all of you were joined. You noticed there was a recording thing.
Yeah.
So we're going to post the audio, but not the video, onto the FIKA groups within the course of the week.
Okay.
I'm sorry I stepped out, but yes, FIKA Talks will be there. I had to attend to a call. FIKA Talks will be there. We'll be discussing something around human resource, like just employment and just in relation to the COVID-19. So we will have like a human resource specialist. We've been receiving all these questions around people who are being laid off, because the future of like the virtual working space and stuff like that. So if you have any questions that you wish addressed, please by all means share with us.
Okay. Excellent.
And as you notice, it's still in the same general topic.
Which is actually appropriate. I think I don't know what's the name for it, but tackling topics that are relatable, something like that. Like they go with the current situations that we are in.
That's what we'll try to do, except once in a while when things have to change. In most cases, we try to tackle what is actually affecting us here and now, and once in a while, we try and look at what will affect us in the future.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and for the left gentlemen and the ladies who have left, as well as the one lady who is still around. Thank you very much. See you next week, same time, same place for FIKA Meat, and on Sunday at 8 for the FIKA Talks. The FIKA Meats and the FIKA Talks are very different procedures. The FIKA Meats, we all join in, we all talk, we all give opinion. On the FIKA Talks, there is a guest, an interviewer, and the rest of us are simply text. So they're very different formats for the two.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. See you next week.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Does Sean and John Diawo have a voice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed John was on.
Something, to something Sean said, but some other time.
Okay.
He's got a type, even if he's not got a voice. So yeah. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Enjoy your evening.
Thanks. You too. Habari Karuga.